News Nation reporter Archith Seshadri joining us live in Atlanta with more on those races and where we stand tonight. All the numbers right now show a very tight race. Archith.
Yeah, absolutely. Those numbers are certainly very tight. In fact, just within the last few minutes from our sources here in Atlanta with the Secretary of State's office, we have just learned that about a third of Georgia's counties have already reported and that those results could be finalized by the end of the night tonight, so within the next 3 hours. What is interesting at this point is about 20% of all of the polling precincts have already reported those numbers. So again, we had those 3 million early vote and absentee mail-in ones that have already come in, and now it's just tabulating these results. Many of those have already been scanned. And after the 7 o'clock deadline when polls close, that's when counties could start counting all of those ballots. My source, in fact, just told me within the last few minutes that Bubba McDonald, who is running for Public Service Commissioner, well, in fact, he has 15,000 more votes than Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler. What is interesting about that is that means that those candidates either do not even vote for the Republicans or they voted Democrat despite voting for Bubba McDonald, who is a Republican. So it's going to be a very close watch, and the length of this, how long it'll take, simply depends on how close that margin is. Those candidates can request a recount if it comes within that 0.5% window. Most political experts that we spoke to believe that it's not going to be a split ticket, meaning that Georgia will, in fact, either see 2 Republican candidates or 2 Democratic candidates. And as we know in the presidential race, that margin was only about 12,000 votes, with about 5 million people heading to the polls. So this one equally is going to be very, very close. So we're just going to be waiting and watching to find out how those results trickle in. In fact, within the next 20 minutes, Gabriel Sterling, the state's voting implementation manager, is expected to give an update. We will be there to get those updates and pass those right along to you. Reporting live in Atlanta, Archith Seshadri, News Nation.
Archith, thank you so much. One quick question before we let you go. The vote seems to be coming in fairly quickly. Is there any sense or any optimism at all we could know the results tonight? The last thing I saw from the Secretary of State was that at the earliest it would be tomorrow morning. Is there any hope or probability that we could have some winners declared tonight before folks go to bed?
Well, yeah, great question. That's the question that everybody wants to know. In fact, yes, we actually may get some of those results by midnight. I just heard that a few minutes ago, and we were equally startled. So we may get those results. Those margins are so wide by midnight. So we'll have to wait and see in the next few hours how wide those margins are for Warnock as well as Loeffler and Perdue and Ossoff. And if they're wide enough, they will be called by end of the day. But it could go on until tomorrow, so we're not sure just yet. But the good news is hopefully this is not going to go into a recount for weeks to come, because they have to have that 0.5% window to demand a recount.
All right, Archith, go get a good cup of coffee, and thank you for being there for us live tonight. Well, as you well know by now, it is election night in Georgia, and both races for the Senate are razor thin right now. We may not know a winner for some time, but it's a nail-biter to say the least. News Nation reporter Archith Seshadri is joining us live in Atlanta with more. Before we go on the 2 big races there, what is the latest on the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. 90% of precincts now reporting here in Georgia. Here's what we know at this hour. The Republicans have a slight lead at this point. Here are those numbers: 51.3% for incumbent Senator David Perdue versus 48.7% for Jon Ossoff, Democrat. And in the other one, it's 50.9% for incumbent Senator Kelly Loeffler versus 49.1% for Raphael Warnock. So could this be a split ticket? We don't know just yet, but we still have 171,000 votes still left to be uploaded from one of the largest counties here in Atlanta, DeKalb County, that could shift things. And I just spoke a short while ago to the state implementation manager, who says about 17,000 votes still left to come in from overseas and military, and that could shift this razor-thin margin.
Archith, I don't know if you can still hear us. We're wondering, you did talk to Gabriel Sterling just a minute ago. What did he say about the count tonight? What's ahead?
He said right now the Republicans do have a slight lead just at this point, but he says because of those overseas and military ballots, those up to 17,000 that could come in, and it could shift that dynamic. And he said a lot of the metro counties in Atlanta are still yet to upload, and that could shift the dynamic, because typically those are Democratic. He also told me that in case the Republicans do lose, he says, well, that is in fact President Donald Trump's rhetoric that he's time and time again turned on the Republican Party, taking jabs at both Governor Brian Kemp as well as Secretary of State Brad Rafferty. Raffensperger, and that could potentially cause the Republicans to lose out on perhaps one or both seats. So we are still watching closely, but this could go into Wednesday, possibly Thursday.
All right, that's what we were looking for. Arch, thank you very much for the update.